Now recently I've talked about how the smaller SUV is really kind of playing havoc with the sedan market, pretty much replacing it altogether. Well, this week is such an example. Hey, welcome to this edition of Road Warrior. I'm your host, Grant Roberson. Now, Nissan hasn't done what the other manufacturers are starting to do, in which is get rid of their sedans. What they've done well is, well, keep the best of both worlds, and possibly this offering delivers just that. So this week's test drive is the 2019 Nissan Rogue, and I can honestly say the first time I drove this model several years back, it didn't grab my attention nearly as much as this one. And one point is the exterior color. Now, this is something I pretty much move right past on a daily basis, but when I give pause to an exterior like this, it's mainly because it's different, and after all, isn't that what a vehicle is supposed to state? Now with the Rogue, it definitely does that with the exterior design. Nice grille warfare, really dynamic exterior. You can see it with the sweeping ridge line, and across the board we're seeing this ridge line. It almost seems redundant on the vehicles I test, but there's always one right across the midline, and it tends to sometimes just be there. On the Nissan Rogue, a little bit more fluid architecture, sweeping down and giving a little bit more of a wow factor, definitely arching up here at the back end, but truly the exterior color. Now if you go with the good old primer color known as the silver and grays, well, that's just the good old plain Jane. Black exterior, well, you've given up the choice and just said whatever. White means you're going just to kind of neutral look, but when you go with something, well, with the wow factor here, it definitely takes notice and, well, takes some guts to, well, buy this. Now, it may have been harsh when I said you had to have guts to choose this color. It just means that you're really delivering that wow factor. Heck, I drive black exterior vehicles, maybe just the standard red. This really steps up and lets people know and takes notice. But one thing that doesn't take guts is really choosing a vehicle like this. After all, it really is sometimes just the best fit. Other cases, you're really oversizing when it comes to bigger SUVs. You end up just wasting gas and just not true economics. This vehicle, well, resizing and rescaling even my mindset, that bigger is better. Now, by the numbers, this vehicle measured in about 184 inches, 106 when it comes to the wheelbase. As for width, just about 6 feet wide and just over 5.5 feet tall. Now, what does that basically mean? Well, my kind of tipping point is the mid-size is, well, around about 185, 186. That's just kind of where I look to when it comes to even sedans or SUVs. So this is kind of right in that nice midway point for me. Anything smaller just seems to be, well, creeping in on my style. But what I like here, unlike other crossover sedan-like feeling SUVs, this delivers when it comes to ground clearance, really about 8.5 inches off the ground. And what that truly does is really deliver that SUV-like feel, even though, well, it may be just a hair smaller than what I typically like. Once you look at the numbers on this vehicle, this is where it truly shines, fitting just perfectly when it comes to overall length and coupling it nicely with interior comfort. What I found is any vehicle that starts to, well, really be smaller than what you see here, you got to get rid of the utilitarian side altogether and really just call it a glorified sedan with something that appears to be cargo. But here on the Rogue, perfect dimensions, really perfect interior comfort, all coupled nicely with the utilitarian side of the thing here at the cargo. Now, swinging around to the back, what I like first is safety features. First with the backup camera and backup sensors, really these being ultrasonic, allowing you to dive in with ease. Better yet is what is behind here. Now, first off, design, you're going to see this elongated roof line, really giving you kind of a spoiler-like effect. Decent, huge, broad glass here at the back end and body color all the way around. But what you really want to see is what's under here. Now, what I like is the operation. Now, you can go manual on this vehicle with the operation, but this one came with the power option. Now, first off, you do have it on the key. You can press and hold it, or simply go right up here to the handle, press the button, and it's going to rise to the occasion. Now, what you're going to see with all the seating in place is just over 30 cubic feet. Now, noting that that is with all the rear seats, it's about as far up as they can go. Now, the true number could probably be more in the mid-20s, but basically plenty of options. Now, let's dive a little bit closer into here to see, well, what it truly delivers. Looking a little bit closer here in the cargo area, it may look pretty much straightforward, but truly there's a lot of things going on. Now, first off, in the outer corners, you're going to find some nice niches. That's going to handle a golf bag with ease. With the extra length on a golf bag, where you're going to need those extra spaces, but obviously with the depth, you can crisscross applesauce in different manners to really get a foursome in here with ease. What you may not notice right off the bat is these panels here. What that allows you to do is transform this cargo into different heights. Specifically, basically this rear one here, you can actually do this right here, really make a nice little deeper pocket, maybe hold things that don't slide around. Now, what you also notice with the one behind it, what that allows you to do is simply grab it, come up here, and make it an upper tier. This pretty much allows you to do different depth, maybe put some items up here, put some items down below, versus maybe stacking items that make it all sling around. You can also take this now, do this here, and almost makes like kind of a little toolbox that really can hide things for one, and also store things pretty much without slinging around. Really nice and innovative with the different cargo options. One thing I like about the Rogue, that even though its size isn't truly commanding, well, they don't underthink when it comes to safety. And what I'm referring to is they don't stop short here with the backup camera, backup sensor. They also deliver when it comes to the surround view, placing cameras on the outside mirrors. That really gives you that surround look 360, allows you to get into those tight spots. And even though this is, well, a modest offering, it still just takes you one step forward into the comfort zone of, well, feeling confident behind the wheel. Now, another place to feel confident is gaining access, and maybe one small little complaint here on the Rogue, like many others I've test drove, and it really comes down to the smart key system. Basically, the vehicles are now locked. You pretty much keep the key in your pocket and forget about it. And where it all comes down to is right here with the ingress. Now, with the Rogue, and like many others, it's pretty much only an access point on the front two doors, and of course the hatch at the back. There isn't an access point really right here on the back doors. What I'm referring to is just simply the button here that unlocks it with ease, but unfortunately that doesn't translate here unless you're there at the front door. So imagine coming up, everything in your hand. It's just one more cumbersome thing to hit there a couple of times and basically gain access. One thing that's really helpful on some of the vehicles I've test drove lately is, well, they give that access point all around the vehicle. Swinging around to the front end, one big topic is always the good old grille warfare, but I've actually set that to the side as of late and talk more about the headlight competition and how designs are truly what sets off the front end. And here on the Rogue, it's definitely a case in point. And what I'm referring to is no longer is it just the headlights, the rectangular designs, the cylinder shapes. It's actually the sculpting and designing of the headlight assembly. And it all starts with LEDs and all the various accents. Not just simply does it throw down the road, but does it, well, throw down when it comes to design. And you see it here on the Rogue with this nice outer LED that really wraps the headlight and simply sets off the front end. Now, one thing I wish they would do is really couple the lighting at the top with the bottom, this really being a true white bright light with the lower accent light down here being kind of more of a yellow amber-ish look. What I'd prefer is to kind of couple those together so they blend quite nicely, but overall the headlight assembly is really replacing the good old grille warfare. So I mentioned basically the safety on this vehicle when it comes to the bird's eye view, the 360 cameras, the front, the side mirrors, and the back. But one thing this vehicle doesn't incorporate, well, is front sensors as well. Now that's perfectly great at the back, the good old sonar really diving in, but it wouldn't be bad here at the front end because a lot of times you're in a tight spot. You can opt when you're in drive to activate the camera so you can kind of see as you're pulling forward, but it really needs to be kind of a thought process versus the automated sensors that would of course alert you should something be in the way. But on this vehicle, it wouldn't hurt to simply just add the sensors, or just always remember to activate those cameras as you're moving forward at a slow pace. Now, as for the power plant, what you're going to find is your traditional setup, good old 2.5 liter inline four-cylinder. That's going to deliver around about 170 horses and 175 foot-pounds of torque, and that is coupled to an automatic transmission that does have kind of a sport mode and the econo to, well, either put some pep in your step or make sure you watch your fuel economy. Climbing inside the Nissan Rogue, this could be the Achilles heel for a vehicle this size, especially for me that's pushing around about 6'1". I definitely look at legroom numbers. Now on paper it's around about 43 inches up front. In the second row around about 37, but interestingly, typically for anything over 41, 42, it's just gravy for my height, and I'm just not sure where they're getting those numbers from, because typically I just can stretch out, but I just could not find it here on the Rogue at the 43 inches it is supposed to deliver. Now I'm not sure if that's because you can elevate the seat just a hair, creeping up those numbers, but it truly isn't 43 inches in the traditional sense of, sliding back. So with front seat legroom numbers not allowing me to truly stretch out as I feel I should, I assume the second row would feel just the same. After all, 37 inches on paper should be plentiful, and to my surprise, that's exactly what they have back here. Now what I found is this is actually one of the best places to be. The comfort, the legroom, the amount of space between, me and my knees between the seat backs is, exorbitant. Now that's kind of surprising. After all, I tend to want to sit here. This actually ended up being the best seat in the house. Now what really accounted for the overall comfort in the second row? First off, it had to do with the second row seat design. Nice and elevated, good cushion, overall leather support, really individualized attention on the outer side. But that was just half the equation. The true part was the amount of space between the seat backs and the seat bottoms. Really plenty of leg room for any size individual. Even better with the extra ground clearance, plenty of room for the feet. No argument there in the middle with barely even a little hump. Now as for other comforts, nice vents there at the back of the center console from the front, really delivering airflow exactly where people need it. As for spacing, you can definitely fit 3 people across the middle, but in the case of just 2, that's going to allow you to lower the center console. That's going to give you great elbow support, not to mention 2 extra cup holders. When you look at the seat back design for the second row, what you're going to find is kind of a 40-20-40 split, with the center giving you a nice pass through when you're using the center console, or even when you just want longer items to go between the second row occupants. Now when it comes to operation, what you're going to find on the passenger side is a nice little handle. Now with the pillar here on the second row door, you're going to have to stretch around just a little bit, but once you grab a hold, really tumbles forward with ease. And what's great is even with the headrest in, with the amount of extra space, these seat backs lay down with ease. Now what's even better is for the operation on the other side, those 2 seating positions tumble forward together, but again, you can activate the center one independently, but otherwise that whole seat tumbles forward, making for a nice cargo floor. And what you'll also notice with those extra deck lids there at the back, it does make for a somewhat of a sloped floor. So we talked about airflow there for the backseat drivers, but looking in the front, what I like is the venting position. Now on the outer passenger and driver, you will find the vent kind of tucked in the outer corner, pointed right to the driver. Now for the window, basically defrosting, that is positioned up there on the top of the dash, points nice and direct at the window, but for the occupants, really nice and angled. Now as you sweep to the middle, you're going to find the vents positioned up high, really putting airflow pretty much where you need it. That versus maybe down low below the entertainment system. Now with that positioning, that does make the entertainment system a little bit lower than some of the competition, which means your eye direction will be pointed down just a hair, but it's not a horrible position. Now what it also means is, this is pulled forward just a little bit, making it less of an arm stretch to get to the entertainment. Now it's to have a little bit closer to see the operation. When it comes to touchscreen systems, one thing I look for is innovation, intuitiveness, and at the bare minimum, nice and colorful, dramatic presentation. That's really what the Rogue delivers versus some of the competition. That's just really straightforward and plain Jane. It really starts with this screen, touch screen, really easy to use, really nice shortcuts here for the presets as well as source selections down below. Now symmetry I'm a big fan of, and it's in the form of the volume and tune select. Now there are other operations basically surrounding the touch screen, just nice little shortcuts right down to the navigation. Now if you lose your way, that's in the form of this menu select, allows you to kind of get this multi-screen plus your entertainment stays there, so you really always know what's going on, but you can really navigate with ease. Now, one thing that can be done a little bit better is integrating the climate controls into the touchscreen system. That helps make the screen a little bit bigger and minimize the need for what we see here. But this is otherwise a nice traditional approach. Symmetric knobs when it comes to temperature select, as well as the various functions in the middle. Now, while we're in symmetry, why not do the fan speed in a traditional knob? That would just make it a little bit easier to look for versus finding the push button, but they are nice and raised, so you can get used to it after a while. Down low on the dash, you will find a nice little shallow tray, a little bit too small for some of the bigger phones, but there are connectivity when it comes to auxiliary jack, USB, and power supply. Now, I mentioned automatic transmission earlier in the two driving modes, Econo and Sport, and well, typically you're going to find those functionalities right here on the gear shifter. But first off, basically you go to driving mode. That's going to be a traditional method right there. Toggle it to the left. That's going to give you the manual-like feel. But looking for the different driving setups, basically, typically you're going to find a button here, a little switch, but that's just not the case. Instead, if you want to switch to a different driving mode, you're actually going to have to look way down on the dash there on the left side in the form of two buttons, either the Econo or Sport. And well, just the fact that they're way down there tends to mean, well, they're out of sight, out of mind, and pretty much you'll forget to use them. For the gauge clutch, you're going to find a standard analog tach and speedometer, but you do have a nice LCD there in the middle. Now, interestingly, that gives you a lot of information, from the radar sensing, cruise control, to other various information. But one thing it didn't do for me, which I do tend to like, is actually the digital speed. Instead, it just gave you a lot of other information, but it did give you actually a readout for the speed. And interestingly, that wasn't actually the speed you were going, but pretty much the average. So it kind of confused me, because I always thought I was nice and steady, but instead it was just actually the average overall. With different drivers getting in and out of the vehicle, one thing I like is the memory function, basically allowing different drivers to set their position. So anytime the seat is moved, well, you can simply put it back with the press of a button. Now, interestingly, for the Nissan Rogue, they do have two memory settings. However, the buttons to use them do not illuminate at night. That means you actually have to set to memory their position in your brain, so that way you can kind of reach up here and just remember how it works. Just for note, the first one is for setting, the second one is position 1, and the third one is for position 2. Now, it does for this edition of Road Warrior, a test drive behind the wheel of the 2019 Nissan Rogue that I argue is probably sized just right, especially for people that don't have that mindset that bigger is better. This really delivering exactly what someone should need when it comes to getting, well, their friends and passengers to where they want to go, coupled nicely with their cargo. And that's really what this kind of model is exactly designed for. No excess needed, especially when it comes to watching bottom dollar, both with the overall cost and at the fuel pump. Now, as always, thank you for watching this edition of Road Warrior. Keep both hands on the wheel and eyes straight ahead.